Welcome to a quick overview and then followed up by a detailed build guide of a 3.7 Legion League Starter, Herald Agony block build. This build's been pretty common for its durability, survivability, but it did take some significant reworking for the 3.7 with the aspects of the Herald Agony taking a fairly substantial nerf. Along with a whole bunch of new evasion skills, rework of how Cyclone is, and I'll go into all those details. Just wanted to provide a quick overview though. Basically what we're doing is cycloning. Our Cyclone is then generating, as you can see quite quickly, our Agony charges, or a Virulence charge, which is what feeds our Agony the damage. You can see that we almost never take damage, and as soon as we do, we use our life on hit to regain it back. So it's a pretty smooth, easy League starter, while it's also able to build into in-game content. This is a T15 lava link. Pretty okay mods on it. I mean, there's nothing too big. Fringy charges, less effective my curses. We have point blank, which is why our Agony crawler's not doing so great. Trying to think what else. Unique bosses got extra life, but nothing special. But as we can see, we can just basically plow through the packs. No problem. No real risk. I've done Elder, Shaper. All of those are pretty simple. We'll just pop over to the boss here. Give you an idea what the DPS at T15 boss looks like. Of course, not a great one because he goes through too many phases. But as you can see, he just kind of immediately gets phased. And we don't even know it. Some of the key things with 3.7, which I'll cover in more detail, is we get new evasion skills. We also, so our survivability is going up even more. And our DPS is going to take a hit from the Agony, but we have some new ways to boost it back up. But we are going to take a bit of a general hit, I think. I think our move speed is going to, our clear speed is going to be the biggest hit that we're going to take. I'm running a Rumi's Flask in general just to keep my block at cap, which I think is 82%, 84%. So pretty just general, simple, easy to play, good for people new to the game. You can start out with just a +1 tabula for pretty much all the game if you wanted to. You can in-game pretty easy and smooth high-level delve with just a +1 tabula. But you can also build it into what this is turned into, which is about a 2.3, 2.5 million DPS. Shaper DPS build that is super easy to level to high levels. I think this is at 92 or 3? 92 and almost up to, and I did that during the last event. So as you can see, pretty quick, easy, simple to play, but yet still powerful even with the nerfs that are going to be coming in with tomorrow's patch. And I'll get into all that detail. Just wanted to do a quick overview covering most of it. Stick around for all the gear details. Alright, let's cover the build in some detail here. So what do we have basically is a 6-length Skin of the Loyal simple robe running Herald of Agony. This creates a crawler, as we saw in the kind of mapping video, that basically is going to do all of our damage. We're going to basically run Herald of Agony, minion damage, hypothermia, vicious projectiles, damage on full life, and an empower. We're running the empower because we're getting a +1 here, which basically is to all of these, which means our Herald of Agony is actually getting +3. Because the empower is going up another one, then doubling, so you can actually get it, I think it's +4 or 5 with a +1 additional buff too. So even in the previous, or the kind of previous video segment, there's a lot of growth even on this character. Some key things, obviously minions, obvious. Hypothermia, we're chilling because we're running hatred, so our crawler is able to chill the enemies, which is giving us 40% more damage with hits against chilled enemies. We might change this out. Well, actually, no, we're going to keep hypothermia. We might change something else out. We might trade our hatred out, and I'll explain that in a little bit. This is just basically projectile attack, speed, damage, and full life. Crawler can't be damaged, nor can it take damage, so this is just a flat, easy, guaranteed 50% more damage. Can't beat that, and of course, standard empower. When leveling, you might not be able to fit hypothermia in until you can get even with an Alpha's Howl, which is the alternative to the Devouring Diadem, you're not going to have enough mana reservation left to actually run hypothermia. You can put Maim in as your leveling spot, and that'll get you up until, that'll cover you for a while. Hypothermia is our most damage option, though, that we have. Typically, I was running Maim and a 6-link Tabula with a +1 corrupt for the entire event. Until I got towards the end when I could get the Skin of the Loyals. So early on, we do need to run Pierce until we get Pierce from our cursing, which we can get from projectile weakness. Projectiles pierce the cursed enemies. We'll go into more of that early on, but you're going to run Pierce in your 6-link when you first start. Our Cyclone setup is changing. So here we have Cyclone, well, in-game it's Cyclone, Withering Touch, Fortify, and Life Gain on hit. When you first start leveling, it used to be Cyclone, Blood Magic, Poison, and then Life Gain on hit, until we got to our Claw, which was around level 30 or 28. When we get the Morchum Morsu. But that was when Cyclone takes 12 base mana. Cyclone now takes a base mana of 2. And we're basically multiplying by 30, or 3, because if we're adding all the mana multipliers up, we're basically multiplying it by 3. So we're going from 36 mana cost down to 6. And even with this reservation, I could technically Cyclone 1 time. No problem, but with this shield, instead of burning through 32 at a time, I'm burning through 6 at a time. It would be no problem to not need Blood Magic in 3.7. So I'm just going to even try it without it. Might have to run Blood Magic until you get to a little later in the game when you have more, when you have this Energy Shield Eldritch Battery set up. Only because, as you can see, our reservation is so tight. For others, we are doing a double curse. So we're cursing with projectile weakness by using a trigger psychic spell when you use. This basically gives us pierce to everything around us. As we're cycloning, it'll fire off the caster trigger. The whole pack gets projectile weakness. Everything pierces. Pierce skill only lets you get 2 to 3 or maybe 4 by default, and it works. That's enough to clear packs, but you're burning a skill gem slot. So we want to run projectile weakness. We need to do it in some way that we're casting it because we don't have any reservation options. We are also running Poacher's Mark. So Poacher's Mark is for your later game, but it is a huge damage boost for your crawler. So the reason for that is, A, it grants them frenzy charges. So basically 30% chance for your crawler to get a frenzy charge on kill. And since it's doing all the killing, basically every pack is going to be 100% chance to get a frenzy charge and keep one up. Your crawler, and I haven't figured a way to get them higher, can run with 3 frenzy charges. And they impact minions much higher than they do a standard player. So frenzy charges on the minion are huge. We don't have to use some weird piece where our charges get applied. Any of that kind of gives us flexibility in our shields and everything. It also grants additional 24 life and 12 mana when hit by attacks. So even at this, technically every cycle we should at least hit with our new Cyclone channel, and we should gain enough mana to cast it again. I don't know how smooth that animation is going to be and how fast that calculation would happen. Maybe if I cranked up some end or threw some mana on here to get my mana to like 15 or 16. Or what I might do is corrupt a ring with minus, instead of like this lightning resist, minus mana cost. Because I could do 5, that would make Cyclone take 1 mana cost. Then I wouldn't even need to worry about Eldritch. I could run it within the 7 mana that I have with just the mana leech I'm getting back from Poacher's Mark. The way we're triggering Poacher's Mark, we're running Tempest Shield. Since we're already going to be running a shield, it's giving us extra block chance. So we're basically getting 3% more block chance, but it casts arc basically, or kind of basically an arcing lightning out, and that can chain 1 time. So what we do is we apply the curse on hit and add chain to give it another 2 chains, and basically this will arc through with 3 chains and pretty much give most of the pack Poacher's Mark. We block all the time, and each time we block, it arcs out. So since we're blocking every hit, just about, 80% of our attacks against us are being arced back. So it's an effective way to curse to get us the Poacher's Mark, which will feed us the mana and feed us extra life so we recover quicker when we do take a hit, and most importantly gives our crawler frenzy charges. I've picked to run Convocation because you're going to need to position your crawler sometimes. Doorways, weird hallways, proximity shields, just the stairways. Your crawler will go to use this tail spike, and it'll miss completely because it hits on the bottom of a stair instead of at the top where all the enemies are. So it really helps with clear speed. You don't have to run it, but sometimes you have to pull the crawler a little long faster than you'd like. We currently are running Hatred and then Generosity, and then this I was just trying to see if I could get some more attack speed. Never really panned out to be worth it. I'll use this slot for one of the new travel or blink skills, or I will use it for Enlighten, so I can push my reservation down and get more mana, so I can have some flexibility there. For my Claw, like I said, I have a trigger Psychic spell. I'm running Shock Nova, so I guarantee a shock for the shock damage. Projectile Weakness for the cursing, and then a Desecrate. The Diadem gives us Eldritch Battery, but it also gives us Flesh to the Feet, or Feast to the Flesh every 5 seconds. This basically gives us a flat life, mana, and energy shield back when it basically kind of consumes corpses. This allows that effect to happen while we're fighting bosses. Generally when you're packing, that's not a problem. If I find that I don't need really to run the Eldritch Battery and I can get away with some trickery here and not needing Devouring Diadem, then I might change this to Feast of Flesh, or one of the offerings, sorry, and run an offering for the attack speed. For the shield, or my other three, I have Flame Dash for gap jumping, Whirling Blades, and faster attacks. I'm going to change these to probably be changed to where I'm using the new Frostblink. I think that's the name of it. Yes, Frostblink. So Frostblink teleports us, so that'll cover our gaps. It damages the enemies and leaves chill ground. The chill ground is key because that will trigger our hypothermia, and the hypothermia means we're going to be able to, well, the hypothermia damage with chill, which means we don't have to run hatred. And the only reason I'm thinking of doing that is I might want to run pride instead, because pride could potentially be more damage depending on what the physical impacts of hatred end up being, and the decrease in our base physical with the nerf to the agony crawler. So we're taking a 7% increased physical damage per virulence charge nerf, and that's going to hurt how hatred works, but it wouldn't really impact how pride's working, with the damage and the extra and stuff like that. So I'm going to probably play back and forth, but the key is to have Frostblink so I can create that chill effect underneath the boss. But that'll also free up, I won't need Whirling Blades most likely, and basically I'll replace Flame Dash with Frostblink. And then that means I don't need faster attacks. Frostblink is instant, so I don't need to basically kind of keep my attack speeds up with that. So that'll give me another skill for a socket to place Molten Shell, which we'll get into in a little bit. For the rest of the gear or the socket setups for our Cyclone, as I mentioned earlier, Cyclone, Withering Touch, Fortify, and Life Gain on Hit. Life Gain on Hit's what's keeping us alive. Fortify is what's reducing our damage. So we personally are doing 0 damage almost. I mean, Cyclone's doing 2800 DPS, nothing. We're just using this to basically get 20% damage reduction. Withering Touch, however. So this is playing Withered on hit, which is a damage boost for our Crawler. Our Crawler converts 40% of its physical damage to Chaos, and this is basically stacking because of our extremely high attack speed. We're able to stack several stacks of Withering or Withered onto the enemy to boost our Crawlers. With the Frostblink, I might work out something where I'm doing a Spell Totem Wither setup. Not sure yet. So that's pretty much it for the gem setups. Our gloves, just any gloves that basically life resist. Same for ring, life resist, life resist. We take the anvil for the block chance and the +3 to maximum block chance. We use wind screams and probably actually convert to wind shrieks is what you'll run. Just so we can apply the additional curse and some resistance. The diadem I've kind of covered. It gives us the Flesh of the Feast. We're 20% mana reduce on the socketed gems, so our hatred's taking a 20% reduction, which is helping out there. We're going to run a Stygian Vise and Ghastly Eyes. All of our eyes, we want to have minions have 6% increased attack speed. And I'll get into that in just a minute. But for the belt, we're going to be running basically resist and life. For our weapon, we're basically going to be doing at in-game a claw with life gain on hit, and then as much attack speed, and trigger a sacred spell. And then this one also has blind on enemies, but that's not a requirement. We're just going to kind of do trying to get these triggered spells so we can boost our damage, because we really don't have another setup that works well to fit there. Some options, but this is the one I find seems the most comfortable without me having to slam 7 keys all the time just to try and keep my damage up. And that allows me to focus on the fight more, which, as we've kind of seen in 3.7, is going to be more important with timing and objects there. Early game, like level 1, 2, 34, basically pick any claw up you can and use it or claws. At level 34, get a cheap Morchum Morsu. Focus on its attack speed, because that's about all you really need. You're not going to be doing a lot of damage still. Once again, you're going to have your crawler doing all the damage. That will be your claw through, well, basically until you get this claw. That keeps you from having to use poison with your cyclone, because the claw is going to give you 60% chance to poison. So that saves you a slot until you can get into a pair of gloves that have supported by level 16 or 18 poison. For the body armor, just get a 6 link as fast as possible. After that, you're going to want to try and get a +1 skills tabula. As I mentioned earlier, the tabula is nice because you can throw maim or hyperthermia depending on what your reservation options are. And then for in-game, you're going to want a skin of the loyal, and that's potentially corrupted with a +1. That way you get +2 to the level of socketed gems. Gives you the most damage. For a helmet, you're going to want to start off with whatever you can get for resist, and then transition into an alpha cowl. That'll keep your mana cost down on hatred, but it still won't be enough to run hypothermia. You'll need to run maim until you can get your devouring diadem. For your boots, wind screams allows you to do the dual curse. Of course, you'll upgrade to wind shrieks, which gives your curses more AoE, which is helpful for this projectile weakness one, and the kind of curse on hit explosion there, but mainly just for the projectile weakness spreading. If you get a corrupted anvil that has, instead of the strength, or actually the corruption with +1 to curses, then what you can do is actually pick a different boot set. Possible boots will be Squall's Talons, which give you Aspect of the Avian, and basically it's a 10% chance for our minions to kind of do some double damage. The other is a bubonic trail with 2 slots, and a little challenging there because it depends on, now that our mana cost is so low and we could put a ring on to drive our mana cost to 1, you could run a bubonic trail. As you're walking or cycloning, everything underneath of you is going to be exploding, so your feast of flesh is pretty going to be pointless. It's not going to regenerate anything for you, which is fine. We should have enough natural ES regeneration to cover that. So you could pick up two more Ghastly Eye Jewels to make up the DPS loss we've taken with this nerf. The other one's Grukon's Flight. Gives you dexterity, so we don't need it as much on the tree, but it also gives you immunity to ground effects, so fire, and like burning. And the key thing with burning is, like on a min-max resist, burning is not blocked. So burning ground's not blocked, which I just said, but it can really eat your life in a hurry, especially if you get ignited. Like when fighting a fire boss or a fire guardian like the Phoenix or the Elders, Guardian, and you get ignited and then they phase and you don't have anything to life hit and your life is just dropping like an instant. We carry a burning flask to cover that, but if you're in a map that's got a lot of burning damage, you can be uncomfortable. Grukon's flight would take care of that. And then otherwise, take a really good pair of Elder or Shaper boots, and work on getting the max life with 6% increased max life corruption on them, and just enjoy the additional boost. Flask, we're gonna basically run 2 instant heals, and then burning and bleeding. I'd like to run an onslaught with removes curses, and basically that's just going to give me the onslaught lets you immediately boost or pump your crawler on a boss after he phases right back to 40 so that he's back to max damage. Currently have a Quicksilver with freeze and chill on it. If you're running Alpha Cal, you don't need that. You can run more speed as you're leveling, or just take the freeze. Jewels, so we're going to run a lot of jewels. We want the base, the flat life, which took a bit of a nerf, and we're going to want minion attack speed. The reason we want minion attack speed is we are taking Spiritual Command, so increases and reductions to minion attack speed also affect you. So the minion crawler gets 6% and we get 6% for each one of these plus the life. So that's kind of doubling up on the attack speed for us, which helps with our Cyclone hit rate, which is what's going to basically give us our life regen right back. And it keeps our charges, our virulence charges at max. And then for the tree, I'll open up Path of Building and kind of go over that a little bit, and some of the new changes that had to be dealt with. And so let's do that real quick. So a few changes. There's this new kind of stun, endurance charge, or evasion frenzy charge set up here. And it kind of shifted us one space over to get our block. So we had to take an extra node to get our blocks. Nothing big there. One of the other major changes is solidity and diamond skin. In previous setups, or as you can see here, it was kind of this node here where you could get 12, 12, 12, and then 15. They apparently thought that was too strong. So now we only get 3, 12, and 3. So I probably won't take that, but outside of that, the rest of the tree was pretty much the same flat kind of setup there. Nothing really changed too much when we were converting. The Gladiator Ascendancy. No real changes here, but let's cover it. So obviously we're going for max blocks. We're going to take Pain Forge, Versatile Combat. We did take some attack speed nerf here. Not really a big deal. And I'm assuming we took that because of Arena Challenger. Since we could technically get Challenger charges, that give us more attack speed. I think they've nerfed all of these subnodes with slower attack speed. Not a big deal. We lost 2 attack speed. When it comes to, of course, Violent Retaliation for the additional blocks and block chances for each time we're hit. Outmatch and Outlast, pointless to take. We almost never kill. You'll occasionally get lucky, kill something because our poison ticked just at the right moment. Not enough to really sustain. We could probably waste a gem slot, run Blood Rage or something and hope to get a little luckier, but it's still not. We're just, our crawlers doing the killing. So that leaves us with Arena Challenger or Blood in the Eyes. So Arena Challenger, we get some movement speed. We get attack speed per Challenger charge. Now here we could actually get move speed and attack speed from Challenger charges when we were in Blood Stance, which we're going to be by default, and we're hitting rare or unique enemies, so bosses and uniques. We would build the charges, we get some potentially 20% more move speed, and be good to go for moving to the next pack, and having some additional attack speed. Potentially some value there. I'm going to have to maybe try it out, see how it goes. The other option is Blood and Ice, is what I've been running. We can cause bleeding. We basically cause maim, which is going to reduce their movement speed. And then we're going to 20% or 10% chance to blind with hits. We hit so frequently, we almost permanently blind the entire pack. And so with that said, we are basically giving ourselves a 50% chance to evade their attacks, which is going to be huge because we'll just evade it. It won't even do a check. And then if we fail the evasion, then it'll do the block. And then that keeps us from basically getting hit almost never. So I'm trying to decide. Arena Challenger most likely during mapping would give some additional move speed, but that's all we're getting. So we're going to gain 20% move speed, and it kind of depends on how the Challenger charges play out as far as like how long they last. Do they stay? Those kinds of things. Got to really dig into what the value is there. I'm still debating. So either one's not a bad choice. Blind's going to be your survivability. Arena Challenger is going to be your potential for just hopping between packs a little faster, which really isn't going to be a big issue with all the new blink and travel and move skills and everything that's been added to the game. If you're having trouble getting between packs, something's wrong. It's going to be more of, can you kill the pack quickly, and can you survive whatever they're throwing at you, which in that case you're probably going to be better off with Blood in your eyes. For the tree, we're just taking basic life nodes, block nodes, and we're typically, as we're leveling, we're just going to come down here and rush our minion damage, because it takes a little bit of time to get to our minion damage and get the spiritual aid, righteous, redemption, all that going. We also need to rush Sovereignty so we can get our reduction on our crawler down, so we have some more comfort room there. From there, we'll come across, come up and get the spiritual command, and then basically just start filling out life every which we can. We do take resolute technique so we don't miss. With some of the new accuracy components, I don't know if we need to necessarily have that, the way they've changed accuracy. And then we're just going to fill in with jewels for attack speeds and life, the best we can get, wherever we can get to get them. Typically, this is about 93, level 93, which is, as we can see from the game, super comfortable to do. I did it with almost no effort. Because it's really hard to die if you absolutely know what the game's doing at all. Great skill set to learn the game in those aspects. So as we can see, our mortar is about 6,200, assuming that gets cut in, let's say, even half. That's still 300. Our tail spike is going to be 2.3 million at the moment. Once the new skill calculators are in, we're probably looking at 1.5 million. And then the cleave is 1.5 now, which is probably going to be about 1 million once the damage reduction gets calculated into Path of Building. For the skills, we've kind of already covered this. I'm going to take Frostblink and then Vow Molten Shell. And let's talk about Molten Shell real quick here. So the new Vow Molten Shell. So basically we're going to get 858 additional armor. And then 75% of the damage from hits taken is good, or so 75% of damage from hits is taken from the buff before our life or energy shield. And the buff can absorb 20% of our armor up to a maximum of 10,000. Now, what I don't know, and I probably wish I needed to look up some clarification, is that 10,000 armor, which I'm assuming it probably is, which means we will basically be saving 2,000 life, is the max that Molten Shell can absorb. It's then going to reflect that back at 1,050%. So that's going to basically kind of flip that back times 10. So they're going to take a 20,000, 25,000 or 25,000 hit damage if we take a full Molten Shell buildup to everything around us. Then of course Val Molten Shell can do 60% of our armor up to a maximum of 30,000. The other option, so basically we're just tripling the values there. The one other way that you could read this is up to 20% of your armor up to a maximum of 10,000, where that is the amount of damage it can take. So 20% of our armor it can absorb, but that value can't be no more than 10,000, which you would have to have some really insane armor values, but you can get it. The reason I picked Molten Shell over Steel Skin is it doesn't grant any additional armor, but it does have a good, I mean, when you look at it, it's almost as good. But you're not getting any reflect and you're not getting the armor back. So, but we get a lot of armor, and the reason we can get a lot of armor is because if we look here, the skin is basically 100% increased global defenses. So anywhere where we pick up armor, we're basically doubling that flat armor value. And even in this case, my shield or my buckler is an evasion shield. It's not even an armor shield. Had limited options in the event. So, if I had this as a 500 or 600 armor, that would be, pushing my armor probably up to 16,000. So that would be a much larger protection amount, which is why I'm thinking this works on that kind of the latter option, where it takes 20% of your armor up to a maximum of 10,000 is the max cap that it can absorb, because that only gives you somewhere in the ballpark of 3,000, 4,000 defense, and this is going to take 2,209 without having to worry about any armor. So for Molten Shell to be any better, it's going to have to work where that's a maximum of 10,000 damage it can absorb. Then of course the Val option, we triple for a big boss hit. Maybe we get out of place and we're going to end up taking a Shaper Slam by accident, or we choose to. This should give us enough life to have effectively somewhere around, let's see here. We almost have 6,000. We're going to at least get 2,000, 3,000 back protection. So somewhere around 7,000, 8,000 life, which should be more than plenty of life to deal with. We'll also have our evade skill, Frostblink, to try and stay out of damage to begin with, but if we need to take a hit, we can. So yeah, and then Frostblink, like I mentioned. Immortal Call is going to be useless for us because it's got some good options there, but we don't do endurance charges, and we don't really have a way to do endurance charge, so that's just not going to work out for us very well. And that's pretty much the build in general. For the items, kind of covered all those. We're just grabbing as many eyes as we can. Roomies. One thing with the roomies, real quick here on the flask, you don't care what the spell block is. You only care about the attack damage, because we are taking versatile combat, so our chance to block spell damage is equal to our attack damage. That makes these roomies super cheap because the 20% roomies that has garbage spell block are fairly cheap. It also gives the opportunity for just 3,000 extra armor, which we're going to double, so that's 6,000 armor just off our Skin of the Loyal, which is where most of this armor is coming from. And then, like I said, this is with a +1. If you can't even get that, though, you're still looking at close to 2 million. And you also notice we don't have the enchant on the helmet for these calculations. The enchant options are 20 or 30% mana reduction. I wouldn't take those. The other one is fires 2 additional projectiles. That would greatly help with your clear speed. To some degree, mainly with the damage aspects when you are laying down the main damage with your tail spike. And then that's pretty much it for the build. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments. I'll be more than glad to answer them. Then the one thing you'll notice is my crawler had the Celestial Herald effect, which is why it looked like kind of the constellation option. It's pretty one of the nicer herald effects to say. Then you can see here where we're basically generating the corpses, and then Flesh Eater is immediately bringing our energy shield back up. And that's why we run that. So appreciate it. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in Legion.